love that guy. Love that guy. Love that guy. Garland is the one that got me into radio, and he has my infinite appreciation for the rest of my life. Full stop. He knows his stuff. In fact, when we were doing Fault Lines, Garland was the one who was doing Fault Lines first. And let's just say there were complications on Fault Lines, and they were moved to a different show. At the last minute, in the middle of COVID, we weren't even in studio, and they were like, "Hey, we need you to take over Fault Lines." And I remember doing Fault Lines for like a good year and a half, thinking, "There's a better person to be doing this." like, why am I doing this? Why am I here? There's clearly a better person to be doing this. It took a good year and a half for it to start to feel like, okay, this is your show. You do your show. It's yours. It's just fascinating. Let me go to chat before going into anything else. What is this? Adrian Dittman, amazing. Jamal, you deserve it. Deservers. I'll just say thank you, Adrian. Epstein was here. Johnny won. SE, love this dude. Oh, love this duo. Yeah, him and I get along very well together. And I even tried to get Garland back on Fault Lines, because one of the things, this is inside baseball, I suppose. There was a rumor, a mean-spirited rumor, that I was Bigfooting my host. The reason they said that is because there were like 7 hosts when we took over. I was a fixture. Everybody else was in a rotating door. And after we host after host after host, it was like, okay, what is Jamal doing to these people when these people are leaving? I was doing nothing, just to be very clear. It had nothing to do with me. I was a constant. I was consistent. At a certain point, I was like, hey, why don't you bring on Garland? Why don't we just have a show? And I think the issue for them, radio is different than YouTube. What you are looking for is different. Ultimately, on YouTube, you want a good show. That's it. You just want a good show. Like, you want it to be engaging. You want to be entertaining. You want people to care about the subject matter. You want people to be engaged, even if they disagree with you in the context of that engagement. You want people to care. Radio is kind of that, but not exactly that. Because if you're doing a political show, you kind of just accept there are going to be topics that we talk about that the public is not entirely going to care about, but that we have to cover because this is the meat and potatoes, in addition to the candy that you may get on the other stuff. And so their take was more so, yeah, you guys will probably have a really good show. You guys get along together very well. We saw it even when we were first bringing you on. I was doing the show with Garland like a week before they brought me on. However, that is not the show we want. We want something different. And so their take was basically, no, we think Garland is better on the other show because it makes the other show better. And we want somebody who is on some level in opposition to you. And so you guys don't necessarily have the same take as you're going on issues. Garland, I think, is very similar. And if you get into nuance, there'll be differences. But they wanted a grander disagreement. And so they were always looking for figures that were further on the right or in the middle, like a Manila, who's more so in the middle. Farron, who's somewhat in the middle. Austin was on the right. Malik was on the right. Malik was on the right, but at the very least, we could agree. What you don't want is conflict. You do, but you don't. Like, you want your hosts to like each other, even if they disagree. If you get a situation where they disagree and hate each other, oh, that's death knell for the show. It took me a while to realize that. Like, I watched Brianna Joy Gray and Robbie go at each other. And I remember Malik and I would sit there like, that is unsustainable. Now, we were saying that because we were in the position of hosts. We understood that dynamic that you need to run. You will get pissed off at your co-host at some point. It will happen. As a law of God, one of you will be having a bad day. A topic that you're going to hit is going to cut in a particular direction. And there will be all sorts of hell to pay between you and your co-hosts when you two are going at it. You need to have a decent relationship to be able to get beyond those issues. And I'm telling you, the same thing happened with me and Malik, the same thing happened with me and Shane. But eventually if you have a good relationship, you can get past it. If you keep doing that, over and over and over, and there's never this kind of refractory. Oh, I don't want to use that language. I want to say refractory period, the period, after you have sex, have an orgasm, whatever. I'll use that. If you don't have a decent enough period where you can come back to normal, oh, it's the death knell for a show. And when Robbie and Brianna kept bumping heads on the issue of Gaza, that's not conducive to a good relationship. You need to, there's a dynamic that takes place between you and your co-hosts that is, I want to say intimate. And I want to use that just because you're talking to somebody for 3 hours, uninterrupted, constant dialogue. And much of the dialogue can be aggressive sometimes, cutting. You have certain biases and things that you need to accomplish, meaning you want to win your arguments, which means they need to lose theirs. And yet, you need to do it in a way where you're not being a dick to your co-hosts, and they're not being a dick to you. And there's a ground rules of respect that you allow between. It's a complicated relationship. It's fascinating. I would have loved to have Garland as my co-host. Him and I get along extraordinarily well. The man is fantastic. He is online what he is offline, meaning he's cool as hell in both circumstances. That is not true for everybody, by the way. There's certain people who you engage with one way on air and you engage with another way off air. Those relationships are even more complicated because at that point you have to put on a show. I don't know. It's fascinating. Love that guy. That's my major point. I want to go to chat real quick before going forward because I got to get to Keir Starmer. Got to get to Starmer. I have never, ever seen somebody so humiliated. And I'm saying this from the standpoint of all of Europe. The idea that you're taking this kind of Mecca-ish passage to the United States to beg them to stay in a war that they clearly are trying to get out of is on its face. Okay, fair enough, you can do that. To leave empty-handed. Okay, again, Macron, looking at you. To get humiliated is something else. That is Keir Starmer. That is the visit to the Oval Office. That is him getting not just nothing in return, but leaving with a bag of humiliation to drag his ass back to the UK, getting nothing out of it, short of people laughing at him. It's astonishing meeting between him and Trump in the Oval Office. I'm going to get to that first. I want to get to the chats. This is Welsh Republic Podcast. Shout out to you, Welsh Republic Podcast. NZ. I don't know what NZ is, but fair enough. Whatever it is. Thank you, Welsh Republic Podcast. Shout out to you. Thank you for that. And Natalie Williams, I've been watching you for a decade, Jamal. You have gotten better. Oh, thank you, Natalie. The radio show helped. It helped. I know some of you don't like the fact that I was on radio, but truth of the matter is, it helped focus the mind. It makes you better at it. You have standards that you have to accomplish, as opposed to being on a channel where you're just kind of a free-form version of yourself. You get put in constraints on radio. It's to the better of the person, not to the worse. New Zealand, thank you. I've never been to New Zealand. I've only been to Sydney, Australia. Australia is gorgeous. My ex, at the time, her company sent her to Sydney. At the time, I just got fired. I got fired because I was in the hospital. I was sick again. My kidney transplant had collapsed. And I'm sitting in the hospital reading the email that I was going to lose my job. On the positive, it was a private company that had stocks. Because I had stock options in the company, when they sold the company, they effectively paid me off for the stocks. So, lost job, got money for it. I take a trip to Australia to visit in what is a failing relationship. This is way beyond the point. I want to get to Keir Starmer. Thank you, though, all of you. Deeply appreciate it, Holly Holmes. God, it's been 10 years. It's been a decade. Can't believe I've been doing this for a decade. Fair enough. Fair enough. Here's Starmer. Come on down. Come on down. Trump says he's going to pull out. Good. Trump says, I'm done with this Ukraine stuff. I'm going to get a deal. Great. Europe freaks out. They have a full-blown conniption shit fit. Oh my God. Our master is leaving. Our master is leaving the house. We must stop him from leaving the house. We need a master. Macron comes. Gets nothing. Starmer comes. Now, both of them are clearly working in tandem with each other. And what they want is, we want an American backstop. Meaning, even if you pull out, we want security guarantees where America will come to our aid if we put in British and French troops. British and French troops sounds ironic and sounds comedic, but it is what they're talking about. Trump does not give them that at all. He doesn't give them squat. And this is Starmer being bent to form, where he is now saying, okay, it's good that Trump is coming up with a peace deal. That is not what he believes, by the way. And I'm going to go into some of the other conversations that have been taking place while they're there. But this is funny. I'm going to start. In fact, I'm not going to start with that one. I'm going to start with this one. When Starmer is asked, where's the clip? Here we are. Starmer wants Trump to give a backstop. Listen to this exchange that takes place between these two. And listen to the pause that happens when Starmer realizes what Donald Trump just asked him.
Between our two countries. That is why this is the greatest alliance for prosperity and security I think the world has ever seen. Whenever necessary, we absolutely backed each other up, and that's at the
Could you
core
take on Russia by yourselves?
Well,
all right, one or two more.
He said that as a punchline. He said it as a punchline. Oh, he said it as a punchline. He's like, we have a good, close relationship. The U.S., we always back each other up. And Trump, out the blue, can you take on Russia by yourself? And then just laughs. Just laughs. Oh, he just laughs. He is pointing out your weakness as the punchline to a joke. He is pointing out your weakness as a punchline to a joke. It is humiliating. You are sitting there begging him to help back us up. And he is using this language of, well, we back each other up. We are allies. We do blah, blah, blah. And Trump's like, hey, can't you take on the Russians by yourself? And Starmer is like, and they laugh because of how funny it is that you would even posit the potential for the UK to take on Russia by itself. They would get their asses handed to it. All of them know it. And Donald Trump is highlighting this in the conversation with Starmer in the public view of media. Now, what's also wild about this conversation, or Trump even positing this, is that so you want to put in French and British troops into Ukraine as peacekeepers. Fair enough. Can you take on the Russians by yourself? Meaning, if you're that hopped up to do that, and I just asked you this question, everybody knowing the answer is no, then what you're effectively trying to commit America to is fighting the Russians on your behalf. Because what we all know is that Russia would target those troops immediately. They have to, with severe prejudice. You cannot have a nose under the camel's tent. And what I mean by that is, the moment that the camel gets his nose under the tent, the camel is coming into the tent. There's nothing you can do. You can hit that nose, you can do whatever you want. The camel is coming in. That's the point. The moment that Russia says, okay, we're not going to target the French troops, we're not going to target the British troops, you're going to get more French, more British, more other groups coming in with the belief that Russia's not going to target those troops. That is off the table. They know it. And so their thought is, if we can get America in, then maybe they won't attack us because America would get involved. Well, dude, Trump is telling you over and over and over again, I'm going to end the war. I'm not going to end it by putting in European soldiers that are going to be tripwires for us to inflame it, meaning you're not going to stick me in a situation where you entangle me into a conflict I don't want to be in. The answer is no. If you want to do it, you can do it, which is his point. You can fight the Russians by yourself, right? You don't need me in this. Why you need me? You can do it. You're the mighty British Empire. The sun never sets on the British Empire. You could fight the Russians, right? The battle-hardened, million-man army that has been killing and dying to the tune of hundreds of thousands for the last 3 years. Certainly, your falling apart British military can do it. You don't need us for this. Trump is making a point. His point is correct. Let's play it again. I love this clip.
Between our two countries. That is why this is the greatest alliance for prosperity and security I think the world has ever seen. Whenever necessary, we absolutely backed each other up, and that's at the
Could
core
you take on Russia by yourselves?
Well,
all right, one or two more.
Oh, that's humiliating. That is humiliating. Oh, that is humiliating. That is brutal. That is brutal. And by the way, it doesn't end there. Here's another clip. I see. I haven't seen the entirety of this clip. It's short though, but I think I know what it is.
Doesn't exist. We're the closest of nations, and we had very good discussions today, but we didn't discuss
enough.
Canada.
He didn't even let him finish. That's enough. We're done. We're done. Think about that. You're the UK Prime Minister. You're in the middle of answering a question, and Trump, before you even finish, that's enough. We're done. We're done. We're done. We're done. No respect. Just no respect. Here's another clip where Starmer, where they asked Trump, "Hey Trump, was here we are." So they asked, Trump has said he's going to put 20% tariffs on Europe. He just blanket tariffs. You guys are taking advantage of us. That's always the line, right? We're being taken advantage of. So I'm putting 20% tariffs. They asked Trump, "Hey, in your conversations with Starmer, was he able to convince you not to put the 20% tariffs on Europe, or at the very least on the UK?" Again, more humiliation.
To persuade you not to put tariffs on the UK? And if I may, Prime Minister, do you think that Vladimir Putin is a man who will keep his word? Thanks.
He tried. He was working hard, I'll tell you that. He earned whatever the hell they pay him over there. But he tried. I think there's a very good chance that in the case of these two great friendly countries, I think we could very well end up with a real trade deal where the tariffs wouldn't be necessary. We'll see. But he earned whatever they pay him. He earned today. He was working hard at lunch, and
Effectively, no. Effectively, no. No. They're still getting tariffs. No. No changes. And one other thing with this that needs to be taken into consideration and needs to be understood. The UK is no longer under the auspices of the European Union. Meaning, if they make a trade deal, they're making a trade deal just with the UK, with the US. They are going to get reamed. When Sarah Bills is on, or when the gentleman was on earlier today, and they were like, the European Union sucks. Okay, fair enough. It's a democratic institution. It sucks. Agreed, because it wasn't supposed to be a democratic institution. It was supposed to be a trade union. And the entire thing was a trade bloc. All of this other stuff that they've added on top of it is in order to stabilize the trade bloc. And so, as a democratic system, less so, right? As a trade bloc, it does its job. No, it's not necessarily great for industries internally to Europe. But if you're thinking of a bloc of countries that represents like 500 million people, that is far more weight to trade as opposed to Fortress UK, tiny island, the UK. They don't have the leverage in these trade negotiations. The UK is going to go into a trade deal with the United States, and the United States is going to throw its weight around like a gorilla in that room in regards to that trade deal. So whatever Starmer is going to come up with some kind of agreement on a trade deal with the United States, yes, they do want a trade deal. No, it is not going to be in their best interest, as it would be if they were associated with the European Union. So Trump saying, yeah, we're going to get a trade deal. Yeah, he probably gets a trade deal. They need the trade deal, but it's not going to be in the best interest of the UK. Here is another clip where Trump points out, no NATO for Ukraine. You can stop talking about it. It's not going to happen. It's done. It's over. They are not going to be part of NATO.
we'll try, but
The Europeans want Ukraine to be part of NATO as part of this deal. Are you willing to budge on that at all, or is it a firm?
well, I could be very nice and say, oh, well, we'll work to it. Look, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. That's what started this whole thing. Biden said that, and all of a sudden the gun started. That was one of the primary reasons it started. And this was long before President Putin. They never said it was an impossibility. So we can say, oh, gee, well, we'll try. But that's something that's just not going to happen. And then the other question I ask is about the land. Will you get your land back? Well, they've fought long and hard on the land, and you and I will be discussing that, and we're going to certainly try and get as much as we can back. But on the NATO, it's just not, that's not going to happen.
It sounds like he's getting annoyed with this question. It sounds like he's getting annoyed. Look, that's not going to happen. No, just no, it's not going to happen. And then to go further and point out this was the origin of the conflict. Now, this seems small because it's reality, but it's a small reality that was never acknowledged. At the very least, not really. Ever so random blue moon, you would get somebody like Stoltenberg who would say, yes, this was part of the reason for the war. The fact that the US president has accepted this as a fact of reality and has said over and over again, no NATO, no NATO, no NATO. You can ask me, the answer is going to remain no. Starmer, you can ask me, the answer is going to remain no. And to say it openly and continuously, okay, well, Ukraine, that's a non-starter for Trump. It's fascinating. Like the changeover is completely fascinating. And Starmer is sitting there being shot down on item by item by item. Tariffs, yes, we're still putting them in. We might be able to get a deal. If we don't, yes, those tariffs are still going to go through. I don't know what you're paying the guy, but you're paying, he did everything he could at lunch to convince me otherwise. It didn't happen. Hey, what about a backstop for the military? Yeah, no, that's not going to happen. Hey, you can fight the Russians by yourself, right? Humiliation ensues. Humiliation ensues. Like, they did this and got nothing. They did this and got nothing, with the negotiations between Russia and the US continuing. At the end of it, Starmer was stuck with this. Not what he wanted, but what he was stuck with.
Closest alliance, I think, of any two countries together for a very long time now. The closest alliance, I think, of any two countries when it comes to prosperity and security. And I know that together we will strengthen that even further. And on issues like Ukraine, thank you for changing the conversation to bring about the possibility that now we can have a peace deal, and we want to work with you to make sure that peace deal is enduring, that it lasts, that it's a deal that goes down as a historic deal, that nobody breaches, and we'll work with you to make sure that that absolutely happens. And it is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much.
Now, he believes none of that. Starmer doesn't believe any of that. Meaning, look, it is not the UK and the French position to end the war. It is not the European position to end the war. And so the fact that Starmer is sitting here is like, hey, I appreciate that you've changed the conversation around the issue of the war. No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't. You don't. You're saying that. Two things. One, Starmer doesn't believe that. Two, there are nuances and implications in the things that Starmer is saying. They're not arbitrary. I'll give you an example. And by the way, Trump is not as dumb as I think they think he is. So when Trump turns to Starmer and says, hey, you can fight the Russians on your own, well, why is he saying that? Right? What provoked that? It didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of the nuance in Starmer's language that Trump apparently didn't necessarily like. Listen to Starmer here, and I'm going to go back to the other one too, but listen to what he's saying here in regards to we're going to back each other. We back each other. We're the US, we're UK. We back each other.
Between our two countries. That is why this is the greatest alliance for prosperity and security I think the world has ever seen. Whenever necessary, we absolutely backed each other up, and that's at the
Could
core
you
of
take
the
on Russia by yourselves?
Well,
Right. The reason that Trump said that is because Starmer points out, well, we're allies. We back each other. We back each other when it counts. Okay, what does that mean? What is that in the context of? It's in the context of British, French troops in Ukraine. We back each other. And Trump is like, dude, hey, can't you take on the Russians by yourself? We're not backing each other in this. That's not where that's working. This backing each other language is Trump is putting a knife in it. When he is making this statement here, where he's like, we're going to work with each other in order to end the conflict. Again, no, we're not. No, we're not. We're not working with you. You are irrelevant to us. Macron, you are irrelevant to us. Callas, or whatever her name is, you're irrelevant to us. We are going to work with Russia to come up with a deal. We're going to present that deal to Ukraine. We're going to get rid of Zelensky if he doesn't sign that deal. And he's not even the PM at that point. We need an election. We're going to get somebody to sign that deal. It may even be the RADA. You will not be part of that negotiation. The language that he is using here is trying to insinuate that Europe and the US are going to work together on a deal when that is obviously not the case. Kellogg is there to babysit Europe and to babysit Zelensky. The mineral deal. Okay, we need to get to the mineral deal. But the language that Starmer is using over and over again is insinuating something that Trump is putting a knife in over and over again as he insinuates it. It's fascinating. Starmer leaves with squat, short of humiliation. The mineral deal is different and interesting. Initially, when the mineral deal came out, Boris Johnson was like, well, wait, this is extortion. Now, Lammy, we got to get to Lammy. So Lammy is the chubby black guy, Brit, at the meeting. Lammy said this earlier, I believe on Twitter. Deluded, dishonest, xenophobic, narcissistic, Donald Trump is not a friend of Britain. He is not fit to hold public office, let alone worthy of our country's highest honors and banquet. The Queen, Theresa May, is selling out the UK to a serial liar and a cheat. Now, this was when Donald Trump was supposed to visit the UK. This is like a year ago, give or take, if not longer. Lammy is right there. This guy, black guy, sitting right there near Trump after having this out on social media. If you believe Trump doesn't know this, you're out of your mind. So the insults are coming from somewhere, right? They're not coming out of the blue. They know, Donald Trump knows what these people have said about him. Donald Trump knows that these people were backing Joe Biden. Donald Trump knows all of this. And as Mark Sloboda points out, probably reviles all of them and has zero issue humiliating them in this meeting. I mean, even when J.D. Vance points out, you guys are not a free speech country. I mean, again, he's doing this in the middle of press to Keir Starmer's face, an underling of Trump, doing this to the PM. It's fascinating. Fast forward. Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson was the troglodyte that went to Ukraine in order to stop the Istanbul agreements that were being agreed upon between Zelensky and Putin that would have ended the war within the context of like a first month when it started. Johnson told Zelensky, you are not going to get security guarantees from us. You're going to continue to fight. You are going to fight. We're going to pass economic sanctions. You're going to have the full weight of Europe backing you in regards to the economic dimension of us going after the Russians. But you will supply the manpower, the materials. You will go out and you will fight. Zelensky cancels the agreement, continues the war. 3 years later, hundreds of thousands of dead Ukrainians, 100,000, maybe 200,000 dead Russians. The war continues with Russia continuing and Ukraine now to the point of in such dire straits in regards to desertions and manpower shortages that they're coming up with schemes in order to get their kids, 18-year-olds, to fight in the war. Zelensky at some point floats, hey, Trump, I know you want to stop the war and I know you want to pull out, but if you give us security guarantees, we may be able to give you mineral rights. We have rare earth minerals and we can give you those. And, you know, this is a marriage made in heaven. Trump says, mineral rights? Rare earth minerals? Do you now? How much are they worth? Oh, okay, let's do that. And so Trump goes with the idea of let's make this deal. No security guarantees attached, but let's make a deal. And let's make the deal not just for rare earths, but for hydrocarbons, for oil, for gas, for effectively 50% of anything coming out of your ground that's been extracted. We want it. And we want it for the foreseeable future. I didn't even see a timescale that was built into the deal, the framework of the agreement that Zelensky was supposedly coming here today to sign. It is a weird deal, and many of the details of the deal need to effectively be worked out. What's interesting, though, for the deal itself, though, is everything that is included goes beyond this idea of just rare earth minerals. It goes into, like I pointed out, oil, gas, hydrocarbons. I think they said extractable resources, whatever the hell that means. That is the thing in the framework that Zelensky is supposed to sign. Now, they are arguing, well, we're going to get security guarantees in this. Up to this point, there are none that are at their disposal. However, Starmer and Johnson thinks it's a good idea. Johnson apparently called Zelensky and told him to take the deal. The reason they're telling him to take the deal is A, I would wager that they know Zelensky is not really the legitimate ruler. And so him signing it doesn't really matter. There's that part. Two, it's so vague and all the details need to be worked out. You're effectively just signing a framework, even though you're effectively signing over all of the future of Ukraine, 50% of it, what's left. But more importantly, they want to entangle the U.S. into Ukraine. The belief being, if the U.S. signs on to a contract where they're getting 50% of pretty much what's left of Ukraine in regards to what's coming out of the earth, then the U.S. is going to care about that. It's almost like if you buy a puppy, you're going to care about the puppy because it's your puppy. If the U.S. is entangled in Ukraine in this kind of business deal where they're getting this kind of financial benefit out of it, then they will be more inclined to protect what's left of it. So even if I don't give you a security guarantee, even if I don't say I'm going to give a backstop to you, then I may still care about the fact that I have a financial interest in the country itself. And because I have a financial interest, may not want Russia to take all of it. Now, again, the objective of Russia is not to take all of it. Irrelevant to the point. They believe that the trade deal will entangle the United States and, on some level, incentivize them to protect Ukraine in a way that wouldn't be the case if the trade deal didn't exist. That's their thought. But you must understand, this is a thought of desperation. This is not a proactive way of going about it. This is trying to get it from behind. Will this work? Hopefully Trump is smart enough to know that. By the same token, Donald Trump looks at this as a financial potential, even though it's vague, even though it's ludicrous in regards to what it's asking Ukraine to give. He looks at it as a business potential. And that, hey, I may not be able to get anything out of it now, but we may be able to get something out of it later. Now, the catch becomes, do you do that and remain unentangled in the conflict and able to end it in the way that you say you were going to end it? Steve Bannon saying walk the F away is probably the most accurate and the most right if indeed your objective is to get out of Ukraine. Trump sees profit. He wants to get something out of it. Can you extract the profit without being entangled? And do so while also ending the war? That's the question. That is what these guys are angling for, considering that their front door plan did not work. It's fascinating. Absolutely, entirely, completely fascinating. These people are sociopaths. And thankfully,